The rain hadn't stopped all day, but it was the silence in the empty lobby that felt heavier than the storm outside. Arman Qureshi stood there, soaked, exhausted, and clutching his sleeping 5-year-old son against his chest, knowing that if this door closed on him tonight, he had nowhere else left to go. The security guard had already shaken his head twice, but something, maybe desperation, maybe fate, made Arman refuse to turn away. If you believe that kindness and second chances can change lives, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Verse. Your support keeps these stories alive. Arman had never imagined his life would come to this. Just a year ago, he had a modest apartment, a stable job at a logistics company, and a routine that revolved around his son, Zion. But life had unraveled quickly after his wife passed away unexpectedly. Grief had swallowed him whole, and in the chaos that followed, he lost his job, his savings, and eventually his home. What remained was a father trying to be strong for a child who didn't yet understand why their world had collapsed. That night, the towering glass building in front of him wasn't just any office, it was the headquarters of Virion Industries, one of the most powerful corporations in the city. And at the top of it all was its infamous CEO, Saira Khattak, a woman known for her icy demeanor, ruthless decisions, and an almost mythical lack of empathy. Employees feared her. Competitors avoided her. The media called her the Iron Lady. Arman didn't care about her reputation. He only cared that the building had light, warmth, and a chance, however small, that someone inside might show mercy. After what felt like an eternity, the elevator doors opened behind the glass entrance. A tall woman in a charcoal coat stepped out, her heels echoing sharply against the marble floor. Even from a distance, her presence commanded attention. The guard immediately straightened, his posture stiffening. Saira Khattak had just finished a 14-hour workday, her mind still tangled in contracts and negotiations. She was used to ignoring everything outside her goals, but something about the scene before her made her pause. A drenched man holding a child. A quiet desperation that didn't beg loudly, but lingered heavily. She approached slowly, her sharp eyes scanning Arman. There was no anger in her gaze, no visible compassion either, just calculation. Yet when her eyes briefly rested on the sleeping child, something shifted, almost imperceptibly. Without asking unnecessary questions, she instructed the guard to let them in. Arman didn't know what to say. Gratitude felt too small, and words refused to come. He simply nodded, stepping inside as warmth wrapped around him for the first time in hours. Saira didn't look back as she walked toward the elevators, but after a few seconds, she stopped and said quietly that they could stay for the night in one of the unused executive suites upstairs. That night felt unreal. The suite was nothing like anything Arman had experienced before, soft lighting, clean linens, and a silence that didn't feel empty. He laid Zion on the bed carefully, watching his son's peaceful face as he slept. For the first time in weeks, Arman allowed himself to breathe. But sleep didn't come easily. His thoughts were restless, tangled with fear of tomorrow and the weight of his failures. Around midnight, unable to stay still, he stepped out into the hallway. The building was almost entirely quiet, except for a faint light glowing from the end of the corridor. Drawn by instinct, he followed it. Saira sat alone in a glass-walled conference room, staring blankly at the city skyline. The same woman who commanded boardrooms with unshakable confidence now looked fragile. There was something in her stillness that felt unfamiliar, as if the world she controlled so tightly had slipped through her fingers in that moment. She noticed him, but didn't react with irritation. Instead, she gestured for him to come in. Arman hesitated, unsure if he was crossing a boundary, but something in her expression, something unguarded, made him step forward. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, unexpectedly, she began. Her voice was steady at first, but carried a quiet heaviness. She spoke of a past no one in the company knew about. Years ago, before she became the feared CEO, she had been someone entirely different. Someone who believed in love, in family, in the idea that success didn't have to come at the cost of everything else. She had once been engaged. She had once dreamed of a home filled with laughter. But one night, just one decision to prioritize a critical business deal over a personal promise, changed everything. The accident that followed took away the person she loved most, and with it, the part of her that knew how to feel. She didn't cry as she spoke. That was the most heartbreaking part. Her pain wasn't loud, it was buried so deep that it had turned into something colder than grief. Arman listened, not as a stranger, but as someone who understood loss in its rawest form. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer empty comfort. He simply stood there, letting her words exist. For the first time in years, Saira wasn't speaking to an employee, a rival, or a journalist. She was speaking to someone who saw her, not as the Iron Lady, but as a human being carrying a silent storm. And somehow, that broke her. Her voice faltered, just once, as she admitted that all her success had built walls so high that she no longer knew how to step outside them. That she had everything, and yet nothing. Arman didn't have solutions. His own life was proof that sometimes things didn't magically fix themselves. But in that moment, something shifted between them, a quiet understanding that pain, no matter how different, could still connect people in ways nothing else could. The next morning, the rain had stopped. Sunlight poured through the glass walls of the building, casting a warmth that felt almost symbolic. Zion woke up smiling, unaware of the quiet transformation that had unfolded overnight. Before Arman left, Saira handed him a simple envelope. It wasn't charity, it was an opportunity. A position in the company, tailored to his experience, with flexible hours so he could take care of his son. But more than that, it was trust. Arman didn't know how to thank her properly. He only knew that his life had taken a turn he hadn't dared to hope for. As he walked out of the building with Zion holding his hand, the city looked different. Not because it had changed, but because something inside him had. And up on the top floor, Saira stood by the window again, but this time, she wasn't staring into emptiness. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel something softer than control. Sometimes, it only takes one night, one act of kindness, and one honest confession to remind us that even the coldest hearts can still find warmth, and even the most broken lives can begin again. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who might need a little hope today.